What is going on, everybody? This is Dylan with the Just Gonna Say It podcast. Huh, I don't even know what to say about this episode. This is kind of a cool thing. For those of you that don't know, I love hip hop, and so today's guest, Big KO, producer and guitar player for Run DMC, Daryl McDaniels, and a bunch of other stuff that he's got going, other projects. He's worked with 50 Cent. He's worked with heck of a guitar player. Heck of a guitar player. He's got a new single out. I'll leave a link to it in the show notes on iTunes. He rips. And not only that, just his love for music, his love for the history of music, and the crossing of genres and various things, like I don't know. It just was a blast and kind of um, I don't know. I could listen to him talk and tell stories about this stuff all day. So I really, really enjoyed this. There's also about half hour, 45 minutes of 40 minutes, something like that, of bonus stuff on Patreon. If you don't see that by the time you see this video, just wait for it. It might be a little bit late this week. The edit was a little bit complicated, but it's coming, and you'll see it. So you can hit the Patreon link down below, and you'll be able to go find that as well. What's going on, man?
Yes, sir. Sorry about the delay. Let's talk tone.
No stress. So, first of all, I kind of do the same thing Blake does. We chat for a bit and then do a little bit on Patreon, kind of the same sort of format. So that's that. But
Cool.
it's great to meet you. Blake from the Tone Mob is the one that introduced us. I listened to his episode with you, and then I was on his podcast maybe like a week or two later, and I was like, dude, that was like my favorite episode you ever did, ever.
Yeah, we veered off into other subjects outside of guitar that just felt natural.
Yeah, for real. Same thing here. Same thing here. I think, first of all, it's weird to be able to just chat with, I don't know, the people that influence what you do, and you get to talk about guitar stuff and anything else. What I really like to do with these things is get to know, I don't want to say get to know outside the music, but we all got here and sound the way we do and write the music we do because it's part of our story. We're like getting out part of our story with our creation, right?
Sure.
I like that whole surrounding thing. I mean, you can Google what is this guitar player's guitar strings, right? We can Google that, but just to hang out and chat and hear your story, kind of find out where you came from, what started you in music, like from the very beginning when you were a little kid. What was the first thing that really got you? I like music.
Wow. It had to be sitting in the back of my dad's. My dad had a gray Chrysler Cordoba with the Corinthian leather. I don't know if you remember that. How old are you, my man? I always ask everyone that when I hop on a podcast, like how old they are, if you don't mind.
How old am
are
I?
you? Yeah.
I'm
All right.
today,
So,
actually.
today's your birthday?
Yeah.
Happy birthday, dude.
Thanks.
Hey, just because it's your birthday, and we'll get into it later, I'm going to send you this X Banzor Forbidden Fuzz pedal to review on your show.
What?
Just came out from my good friends at X Bandora Pedals. They do the reissue Fuzz, and I'm helping them build their artist roster, and I'm very lucky to be an artist as well. So I'm gonna send this to you for your birthday. Happy birthday! Okay, so now that we're the same age, I know that I know who I'm talking to now. Back of the Cordoba with the Corinthian leather, right? And I grew up in New York, so there was a station in New York called WBLS. And the main DJ there was a cat named the Chief Rocker, Frankie Crocker. one of the most popular DJs in the country, and he owned New York. And he played an eclectic mix of music in the late 70s. So I was hearing everything from Queen. Another one, Bites the Dust, came out in, 79? And that's all you heard on New York radio. And you're talking about how things influence and culture influence one another. That record was cut because Freddie Mercury was hanging out in New York, and he was feeling the disco vibe, and he was feeling the vibe of the city, and he went to the studio and cut that track. And Brian May and those cats, Brian May didn't like Another One Bites the Dust. There wasn't really a lot of guitar in it. It was a bass-heavy groove, but it had its finger on the pulse of what was going on in New York. A Queen record, and the Queen record was influenced by another record, Good Times by Chic, which is a big hip-hop breakbeat record. If you don't know it, the amazing Nile Rodgers on that plays some of the spankiest, funkiest guitar imaginable. So as a result, like I was saying, Frankie Crocker played an eclectic mix. I was hearing everything from Queen to Mountain to Led Zeppelin to the Rolling Stones. Frankie Crocker played anything that black people thought was cool, and that was groove oriented. And as a result, I was just exposed to a lot of types of music. And then my dad also was a product of the late '60s Woodstock vibe. He was a soul brother. But he loved rock music himself. He graduated high school in 1969.
Right.
He was in high school during the Summer of Love. So all kinds of music really was pumped in the back of I heard in the back of my dad's Cordoba, and that really would spark my interest in music. Sitting in the back as a 2 or 3 year old, staring out the window, just hearing all these amazing sounds coming through the airwaves.
So what got you actually playing music then?
That took a while, because in the late '70s and early '80s, a lot of music programs in the inner cities were cut, and I was lucky enough to go to a school outside of the inner city, but I lived in like a lower middle class neighborhood, so wasn't a lot of instruments around, wasn't a lot of bands. In the '70s, there was tons of bands, big funk bands. Everyone had an instrument. Everyone played something. If you can walk down the block and there were bands practicing. And I think not just in the African American community, but just all over. But in the late '70s, early '80s, with drugs hitting the inner cities, music instruments and music just fell off the radar in a lot of school systems. So really, it was listening to music early on, and then I've told the story before. I've told it on the Tone Mile podcast, and I've done a gang of interviews about it. But my gateway to playing the guitar probably was being a kid in the MTV era, and then Run DMC with their record Rock Box. Because as a kid, it was a rock record, but it was a hip hop street record. So it showed me like, look, these sounds are cool. If these guys look just like the guys, they look just like my brother and everyone that right outside my window. And if they're rocking over loud, heavy, hard guitars, and if they say it's cool, then it's cool. Because there wasn't a lot of people that looked like me on MTV in those days until Run DMC.
That is really so. This was going to be one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because nowadays it would be sort of weird, or people would think it would be weird to go backwards and be like, I like hip hop first, and so now I like guitar. Mm-hmm. But in those days, hip hop, first of all, wasn't actually really invented yet, like the way we know it.
Sure, it was a new art form.
And a lot of that stuff was coming from the disco and funk era, and it was all real instruments still, right? At that point. So then to cross it over and say, we're going to put heavy guitar in this funky, hip-hoppy rooted music was a crazy crossover at that point.
It wasn't. And actually what happened is a lot of those hip-hop park jams, when MCs would come out and rhyme, some of the most popular break beats were rock break beats. Billy Squire, the Big Beat.
Wow.
I mean, so many hip hop songs, including one of Run DMC's first hits, Here We Go, is based on that drum break, the Big Beat. I don't know if you're familiar with the Big Beat.
I am. So
in the park, DJs would cut 2 copies of the Big Beat up. Boom, 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 boom. So the rock beats were always there.
That's what I was going to ask you. So you had a DJ in the park who would cut a rock beat out, and then actually the hip hop side would come in on top of that.
Right, on top of that. So since the very early days before recorded hip hop music, you know, MCs were in the park rocking over rock break beats. Billy Squire, the Big Beat. I'll give you another huge one. Mountain, Long Red, the Woodstock, live at Woodstock version. I'm a huge Mountain fan, first of all. I'm sure we'll get to my guitar influences, but
yeah,
Leslie West, that's, you know, he's my number one influence. But yeah, Mountain, Long Red, that break beat. Everyone has used parts of it. Boom, 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 boom. You out there? Boom, boom, boom. Louder. So clap your hands to what he's doing. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom. And then it goes into, you know, a major guitar, southern rock kind of thing. But those beats are the common thread throughout all those music. So the rock beats grabbed me. And then somewhere along the line, you know, a genius producer by the name of Larry Smith, who produced all the early Run DMC records, absolutely legendary, probably the most important hip-hop producer of all time because of the records he did with Run DMC. He came up with a novel notion of, let's kind of create let's listen beyond the breakbeat, because, you know, interesting things happen after those drums end on the breakbeat records. So once Big Beat ends, the drum beat, and then those guitars kick in, Larry Smith was like, well, why don't we just take the hard beats that, you know, DMC and Run love, and then I'll just get a buddy of mine, Eddie Martinez, to come in and play those big riffs. And that's really what happened with Rockbox. It was, they wanted to do something that felt like the park jams. And then Larry Smith had the foresight to be like, you know what, let's actually make a real breakbeat record and bring in, not sample the guitars, let's call in my buddy. And that guy was the legendary Eddie Martinez, who has, you know, played with Robert Palmer and Mick Jagger. He played at Live Aid, and just tremendous Meatloaf, just a tremendous session player. And so they went in there and cut Rockbox. And as a result, it was the first, because of those guitars, MTV was like, you know what? This is finally a urban or a black record that we can get behind. It sounds like a rock record. It won't scare kids in Middle America. So as a result, Rockbox became the first ever hip hop video played on MTV, and I was one of those kids, and you probably were too, in front of the TV, you know, waiting. I was waiting for Michael Jackson and Prince, and then Run DMC. But as a result of waiting for those videos, I started to like Kiss, Van Halen, Judas Priest, Wasp, Cinderella, Bon Jovi, because I was sitting there waiting for, a rap video. So it's so tremendous. Talk about what gets you started. The first thing before you pick up a guitar, you have to like love a certain genre of music. And the first two genres I loved was hip hop and rock. Because back then it was like the world wanted to come together. After the 60s and 70s, the turmoil in the 60s and 70s, I think in the 80s, everyone just wanted to get high and forget about what happened in the previous 2 decades. So it was like, that's why you had artists like Run DMC and Aerosmith working together, breaking down barriers, changing the world. And I think that's important, man. I think a record needs to come down the pike again that can unite people. And I think me and DMC have done it with our new record. But I hate to be long-winded, but you asked me what got me into playing. It was listening and first, Run DMC introducing me to that guitar sound.
See, that's what I wanted to know, though, because that is huge. And conversely, I grew up in the Midwest. And, during that time, I grew up in the Midwest. I had a Magnavox power player with the 3 big speakers and the breakdancing on the cardboard and the skateboards and like all the crazy stuff from the early 80s before there was metal, before there was, all those metal bands, it was Wasp and all that you mentioned.
There was no scene. It was just like that's one thing that everything is so scene oriented. Like when you become a scene, when you have a scene, then all of a sudden you have outsiders to that scene. But in those early days, like you were talking about, it was just, there was no really, you couldn't say it was new metal because rap and metal didn't exist yet. You know what I mean? Like it.
Nope.
But I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I was going to say, I was at that point where I was the opposite. I didn't really know what hip hop was. I was pretty young. Obviously, everything is new, but I was like trying to search for anything with a guitar solo in it. So when I listened to the Thriller record, I went straight for the solo on Beat It. Like if it was a guitar solo, it didn't matter what kind of music was in. I was pulling it out of there. And of course, so Run DMC and then later on Rage Against the Machine and like that stuff just like pulled me straight in. If there was a guitar solo, I was pulling it out. It didn't matter what song it was in.
That's what's awesome about the era. I was talking to somebody about that recently. In the 80s, everything had a distorted guitar solo in it. Every genre of music. Patti LaBelle, R&B, soaring guitar solo. And it was like you could tell studios were getting into rack processors because it was almost like the same kind of sound, outside of like metal and stuff and rock, but across pop and like R&B and other kinds of music, everything had that heavy guitar. I'm talking about like the Temptations had a searing guitar solo, Cameo, like all these R&B groups that, again, a lot of my basis of music was what my dad and my parents were listening to. And they were listening to a lot of hip R&B in the 80s, and that heavy guitar sound was just a thread that, again, like you said, I was always listening for it, and anything that had a guitar solo on it, to this day, I think that's kind of what sets me apart, because a lot of those songs, or a lot of the songs I like to play and that I find interesting to play are songs that don't have tabs. And you can't look it up and be like, you can look up a Metallica song, there's 10 million tabs for every song. And look up a Marvin Gaye song. Like there's no tabs. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to talk about the complexity of it because obviously there's a more complex styles, but there's just no tablature out there to even like begin to learn these tunes. Like for instance, if you want to learn the guitar solo from there's an R&B artist, Al B. Sure. that I love and used to really love back in the day. He had a really good tune called Night and Day that had a dope guitar lick, like an intro lick and a searing solo. Like if somebody wanted to play that, like how would you go about learning? You would have to, listen to it, and at this point, I can pick anything out, find a root note. But when I was a kid, hearing all those songs with guitar solos in it, it was frustrating for me finding out how to play and what those sounds were and how to achieve those sounds. And I guess that's what leads everybody on their quest for tone, right? Like, what are those sounds and how do you get them?
Kids don't know the struggle of having it on vinyl. The solo is right here, and you can kind of see in the grooves where the solo is supposed to be.
Where it's going to come, yeah.
So you drop the needle on it, you'd listen to it, you'd back it up. Oh, it's too far. You'd have to like seek it out again and do it again. I remember doing that. Check this out. With an Isley Brothers record, because Ernie Isley's fuzz tones were so good. I remember trying to learn that stuff.
Man, okay, so let's get into tone.
Okay.
Ernie Isley fuzz tone. For the longest time, I had told Blake on his podcast. For the longest time, I felt all I needed was that basic funk chain that Ernie Isley had, which is, wah, fuzz, phaser, delay, maybe. You know what I'm saying? But those three, that's all you need to play Who's That Lady and Voyage to Atlantis and all those great tunes. I warm up with Who's That Lady.
Oh.
Like if I'm testing a fuzz pedal or how a fuzz slams into a phaser, that's the lick I play, because it fuzz, in order to get that 70s funk tone, it has to the phaser has to swirl right. And then honestly, the 70s funk tone is really not a tube driven tone. It's like a sharper, almost a solid state kind of sharper edge tone, not a rounded tube type tone. So it's a sharp fuzz tone, and the way that hits the phaser is the funk, right? So Ernie Isley, whenever I test a fuzz pedal, it's Who's That Lady. But for the longest time I felt that's all I needed. And but now I'm here with a huge pedal board, because now I have to emulate all those Run DMC sounds. And then if you produce a record like Ghetto Metal that has like the Brian May harmonies and all that, now I back myself in the corner. I have to go out and reproduce this on stage and live. But it's fun. It's real fun.
So obviously you're playing all of the Run DMC stuff now, and all of the new stuff that you and Daryl are doing. I've always been interested in why you chose a Les Paul, because obviously coming from the hip hop background and all the funk stuff, you would have thought
you would think I play a Strat
or something funkier, you know what I mean,
than
absolutely. A Les Paul.
I think about that all the time, and I got asked that question a lot. Two reasons. Coming from the hip hop background, I never wanted to be a biter. Like, I see a lot of dudes that, like a lot of black players, they idolize Hendrix. Everyone idolizes Hendrix, but some black players idolize him to the point where you kind of lose yourself, and you're not finding your own sound. You can emulate Jimmy very well, but you're kind of lost it. Like, I know dudes that rock funky bell bottoms and afros, and it's like, that's super cool. Express yourself. But even Jimmy would tell you, if he was still here, you have to do your own thing. So I love Jimmy's music, but I never studied it to the point where I feel like, because I'm a producer, and my mind is like a sampler. If I listen to it for too long I will be playing exactly like him. You know what I'm saying? So I listen to the point where I admire the production techniques and their amazing virtuosity, but I never try to, turn it too inside. Like, I know all the licks. I love Foxy. I know, Foxy Lady, Voodoo Child. It's a must play, but I never really wanted to get lost in that. So my two biggest three of my biggest influence are Curtis Mayfield and Jimi Hendrix and David Gilmour, all three Strat players.
Right.
So that tells you right there why I wanted to play a Les Paul, because I wanted to do something different. When people think of, and now, when people think of funk, like you said, they think of Stratocasters. And now funk is so watered down that when people say funk, it's like a nerdy guy on a Stratocaster. And it doesn't, it honestly, being a black dude, I can talk about this. That's not really funk. That's funky. There's a difference.
Right.
We can break this down. You're talking to the right dude. Like, something can be funky, right?
Yeah. Like
that's
Weezer or Buddy Holly funky. But that's not funk.
Look, anything or anybody can be funky at any given time. You can sit down and play a funky lick, and it's a funky lick. But you wouldn't say that's funk music. Like funk music, I wish I could show you the stuff behind me, but I have a Funkadelic One Nation Under a Groove flag. Like, funk doesn't sound like the Seinfeld theme. Like,
right.
Let's not just because you can slap and that's like, funk is dangerous. Funk makes you move.
Yeah.
Funk makes you groove. Funk can, there's a saying that George Clinton says, funk can move you or it can remove. Funk is a way of life. So there's a difference between somebody being funky or playing funky licks and funk music. Like, funk music is James Brown, Sly and the Family Stone, Parliament Funkadelic. I can go on and on. It's not quacky, watered down vanilla funk. I feel strongly about that, and that's why DMC told me, like, well, look, just go out there and just play, and I got your back. And so we'll dominate rock first, and then if you want to take funk back, we can do it this summer. I'm like, cool, but like I was saying, because I love those players, I steered away from Fenders and stuff like that. And then I wanted to show that, like, you can play funk music on a Gibson. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if you think about it, funk originated on Gibsons, right? Okay, Freddie Stone from Sly and the Family Stone, a hero of mine, played big-bodied Gibsons. Dance to the music, I Want to Take You Higher. Look at any of those old clips, big-bodied Gibson jazz hollow bodies. Same thing with the Motown guitar players. My favorite, I can write a book on Motown music. I study it so much. They're two out of their three guitar players played Gibson. Robert White played a big Gibson L5, and Eddie Chank Willis played a Firebird. And almost all those backbeats that you hear on Motown records, that clink, 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 doom, 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 clink, yep. Firebirds and that L5, clink. So, Gibsons have always been at the forefront of funk. Even, you talk about B.B. King, Freddie King, Albert King. Like, only in the 70s did it get watered down, and like, now Strats are like considered, the funk standard. But I tell you, if you look at Hendrix, towards the end of his career, which is so sad because it was just the beginning of his career. That's another reason why the story of so many people idolize Hendrix, and I idolize him too, but the story's a little deeper for me because it's tragic. What happened to the brother? 27 years old, it's like people idolize him, guitar, God, or whatever, and don't even respect the struggle of what he went through in his life. At 27 years old, to have that much weight on you, and to like, you would think the way people talk about him, like he didn't even see 30. Career, no. 4 years, boom, gone. 4 years. But, again, I wanted to show that, you can play funk on Gibsons, and I wanted to do something different. And then so I really got into like Firebirds and Les Pauls, but then once I started going back, I'm like, that humbucker sound has been there like from the beginning on funk records. And so and then also like once I got into like the whole Gibson system, because I'm a Gibson artist now, and I saw what Gary Clark had and what he plays. He plays a beautiful SG. Mm-hmm. I saw my boy Kirk from the Roots, Kirk Douglas.
Yep.
Has the Captain Kirk SG Black. Beautiful. Like I'm begging him one now, Kirk. But they both had SG, so I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be a biter. That's their thing. Let me do something different. Now, when it comes to Les Pauls, my boy Slash got that on lock. So, so it's hard to become synonymous when you play a Les Paul. So, but to be honest with you, I love to record with Les Paul. If you're looking, I played it on the DMC stuff and in the video. If you watch the video, like I don't know if you'll pump it in later. Oh yeah. There's a move I do with the Les Paul where I kind of pull it over my shoulder like Kiss in the Tears Are Falling video, and my shoulder has been hurt since. And this is like 4 months ago. So I recently got one of these.
Ooh.
Karina V.
Oh, you're hurting me now.
So, but I got some special things to it. You ain't gonna see the appointments. Every day.
Not quite yet.
Not yet, but little
Awesome.
serial number with my birth date on it.
Oh man.
But so I've switched to Karina V's because Les Pauls are super heavy, dog. But I love them sound. But Jim DeCola at Gibson, who's a good friend of mine, he actually hooked the V up to have the same the V and the Les Paul have the same pickups, 61 burst buckers. So
cool.
I can record with the Les Paul in the studio, and then if I need to go on stage, I can take the V on stage and not kill myself and have the same sound and have the sound consistent. That's what it's about, like for me now, like having a consistency in sound with the records, and then also like when I play rock box, it has to sound like rock box.
Right.
Eddie Martinez is a hero of mine, and actually he just moving on slightly. I'm sorry, I ramble a bit, but the Benson amp that I have coming, it will be here Monday. It's my custom signature, so it won't be commercially available yet, but it's dope. I can't wait for everyone to see it. Blake actually reviewed it, so that might be dropping this weekend too. So he played it first before me.
Because he's down the street from them.
Yeah. So Blake and Chris Benson, and the amp is called the Rock Box. And Eddie Martinez, I'm like, Chris, whatever you gotta do, because Eddie Martinez lives in Portland as well. It's like,
wow.
What's in the air in Portland? You have Benson Amps, Tone Mob Podcast, Eddie Martinez, the company that do my IEMs, Campfire Audio, they're in Portland. I'm like, maybe I need to move up there. Like, what the hell? What's the rent like up there? It's a lot of creative energy. I like creative energy. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But yeah, that was like super cool and super important. Eddie Martinez came in and signed the inside of my amp.
Oh, wow.
And then he blessed it, turned it up to 10, and played Rock Box and King of Rock on it. Then they wrapped it up, sent it to me. Holy shit. That's like, if you're a Jimmy Page, all right, it's the equivalent of, what was the first riff that you fell in love with, the first riff that you learned?
The first really hot guitar stuff would probably have to be early Van Halen stuff.
Early Van Halen. So So what's the first riff that you nailed from Van Halen that you were like, yeah, I got that riff?
I don't know that I ever actually. I don't know. Actually, I ever nailed it.
But you don't play it that you're like,
Yeah.
I feel like when you're in your room, you're like, I'm Van Halen. You're dreaming of Van Halen. Like,
I would say
what
that
was
happened
riff for
more
you?
so for me with Stevie Ray. Like,
Okay,
like
Stevie
I couldn't stand the weather kind of thing,
Okay.
or any of that kind of stuff, because that would be my other major influence is Stevie Ray.
Okay, so it would be like if Alexander Dumble made you an amp back in the day, or now, or whatever, Stevie Ray and Mr. Dumble was still here. And then you're like, you know what, Alexander, can you get Stevie to sign the inside of the amp and play Texas Flood on it? Or my favorite.
That's insane. Yeah,
But it's a different scale, a different vibe with my amp, and but I'm just trying to make an equivalent. So for Eddie to sign the inside of the amp and then bless it like that is like,
well,
it's next level.
and to go full circle with you, to be like a kid in the park, hear Rockbox and be like, I want to play guitar. Now you are playing that song with DMC, with an amp that is been blessed by the person who played it originally. That's ridiculous, dude. That's ridiculous.
I don't know if you're into comic books and stuff. I am. It feels like some comic book type of stuff to wear. But honestly, that's something that me and Blake touched on, man. It's like when I was a kid, would I have ever imagined it? No. But in the same token, yes. Because as a kid, you dream. You stood on your bed and did air guitar to Van Halen. You jumped off your bed like Eddie and did splits like Dave. You dared to dream. The thing that was frustrating for me and possibly for you was that no one looked like me. I was just, and then also I had to fight in my neighborhood. I grew up in right outside of Queens, New York. It's not like being a Kiss fan was super popular, but I was Run DMC and everything hip hop, Boogie Down Productions, Slick Rick, but also I love rock music. So I had to fight for the music that I loved back then, and it wasn't something that you can really, like, I wasn't walking around with my boombox bumping Kiss, but I could do that with Run DMC. Run DMC gave me the confidence to be like, you know what? A year or two later, I could bump Kiss, and I didn't care because it gave me that confidence musically, to do my thing. And I think that's important, like the audacity when you're young and you're getting into guitar playing. Don't be scared don't be scared at all to dream. Like I moved the other day, last week. That's why I had to cancel last week. I'm very sorry.
No worries.
But as a result, I was just unpacking just so many memories, and I found pictures of myself in my old room when I was a kid, and I had posters all like plastered on my wall. Circus, Hit Parader, BMX Action, and then sometime in 1988, all those posters went down. It was just strictly hip hop, everything like plastered from top to bottom, and right in front of because I was a DJ. So right in front of my turntables or with Run DMC posters, and I would go to bed and their face would be right next to the wall. I have pictures of like my room, and like, so that energy just surrounded me. And I never ever would have thought, but yeah, when I talked to Daryl about it, he's like, one thing he always tells me, and I want to get it across to your listeners, that inspiration works both ways, man. And because when I met DMC, I easily could have fanboyed out because I truly, truly, truly was a fan. But, he very quickly diffused it and was like, look, I'm working with you because you're an amazing guitar player and a really, really great producer. And you have a knowledge of both worlds that I need on my records. Because, a DMC record, especially our new song, it goes right down the middle. The hip-hop fans can love it, and we don't have to change it in any way. the rock fans can love it, and we don't have to change it in any way for them. It's very rare that you can get a record that goes right up the middle genre-wise, that you don't have to change it for and to make it fit to any genre. It's really we were very lucky to be able to do that. DMC says this is his new Walk This Way. He says it's the best record he's ever done, and I'm like, whoa, hold up. How does a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer say that to me? I'm like, don't say that. He was like, no, you have to understand what I'm saying. He was like, inspiration works both ways. He was like, you made me feel like a kid again, K, with that track. It made me feel like I was listening to those break beats again in my room in 1979. And I'm like, wow, like I started to understand what he meant. And then also Ghetto Metal, even though it sounds like a Run DMC record, and obviously it's so influenced by them, it's a DMC record.
Right.
So when he says this, it's the best DMC record pop, and I still find that hard to believe, but because I'm trying to make his next best one. But yeah, like he said, this record could break boundaries, and it could unite people, and it goes right up the middle, and it has that familiar groove. It feels like something you've heard before and something that you loved, but maybe you've forgotten how much you loved it, and we had to remind ourselves and then the fans like what it felt like in 1986, 87. You were there, dude. Remember when Walk This Way and It's Tricky was the hottest records in the country? Let's say summer of 1987.
Yeah.
What a glorious time. And it's like, look, I've never been a musician that want to get trapped in an era. A lot of rock fans and rock guys they get trapped in an era, and they don't like to see their artists move past it. But
that's what I caught from what you just said as I was thinking about that. If you're talking to DMC about all this and he's like, no, I'm trying to do the next thing. This is coming from a person who is a legend in so many ways and could just lean on whatever he already did. It has to be
new. Yeah, it has to be new for him. That's what excites him so much, that it's not another reiteration of Walk This Way. It's not another reiteration of Rock Box. It's capturing the feel and the sound, but it's a totally new riff, totally new track. It's not at all. There's no Run DMC references in it. There's no Run DMC sample. Well, there's a Jam Master Jay sample at the very end of Run DMC at Live Aid that I thought was very important. That had to go in there because I'm like, yo, everyone talks about Queen at Live Aid. Like Run DMC rock Live Aid too, with two turntables.
I remember that story.
Two turntables and a microphone. Like an amazing, just like Jarrell told me a story that was mind blowing about Live Aid, so I felt that was important to put in the record. Like a sounds from Live, but I don't lean into Run DMC when I produce for DMC because you don't have to. All you have to do is you're leaning into it just by doing a record for him. So you don't have to try to, like, sometimes people get so caught up, and again, inspiration has to work both ways. Because you can tell him, oh, D, you've inspired millions. And it's true. But I have to now inspire him to go in the booth and make, and like the lyrics on Ghetto Metal, I don't know, man. It's hard to believe that he's talking about me in the lyrics. But he's talking about, it's a condensed version of my story that we set our conversation off with, about how I was a little black kid with a rock guitar, and I didn't take lessons. I taught myself. All that shit is real. And he said it, and I mean, that's the whole thing about our music. It's not poser. It's so real. Like the beats, the rhymes. Sometimes people, when you get caught up again in trying to make music for a scene, it just becomes not real. Like everything we do is real because we're real people. The DMC is not me. DMC is a rock and roll Hall of Famer, Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award winner. I can just go down the list of adjectives and awards that he's won. But I tell you, if I was to plug him into the interview, he would hop in right now. He's the most down-to-earth icon you've ever seen or met in your life. And it's humbling to me to work with him, because if he's humble, he wakes up every day eager to make new music, make a difference in people's lives, make a difference in children's lives, then you know what? Then that's what I have to do every day too. Get up, be the best guitar player I can be, make a difference in young people's lives, make a difference in people's lives. Bring caring, empathy back, and unity back through music. So when the beat hits on Ghetto Metal and everyone starts nodding their head, that's what it's about, right?
Yep.
It's about everyone just being in agreement that something is dope. So,
and then you listen to it 2 or 3 times, and you're picking. It doesn't matter who you are, or where you grow up. You're picking out, ooh, this riff reminds me of X. Mm-hmm. This riff reminds me of Def Leppard. This riff reminds me of, and it just continues to draw you.
I've heard that a lot. I've heard that a lot of Def Leppard. Well, somebody asked me, the drum groove, that's Def Leppard, right? I'm like, nah. I'm like, honestly, I love, first of all, let me say, Def Leppard, Hysteria, top 10 records of all time. I'm saying all time, yeah. Or top 20. I mean, look, yo, when every song has a hit single, when every song on the album has a hit single, I don't care what you say about like that. It just banged on another level. Hysteria, Animal, Women, Pour Some Sugar on Me, Armageddon It. They had so many hits on that album. I mean, when I was a kid, and when we were kids,
right?
That Hysteria album rocked for like 2 years straight. They was dropping videos from that shit. And the same set, that live rotating set they have, they did Pour Some Sugar. They did that video like 10 times. but that record just hit so hard. So I was influenced by that sound. But as a producer, as a hip hop guy and a guitar player, I'm able to like mentally sample stuff. So if you listen closely to Ghetto Metal, there's like these Brian May harmony like parts. And that's because I was listening to the Flash Gordon album like the whole time that I was doing Ghetto Metal. That fucking Flash Gordon album by Queen, the original soundtrack, look, everyone thinks they know it, but it's really slept on in the Queen catalog. Like, okay, everyone knows the theme song, the theme from Flash, which is absolutely amazing. But that guitar in it, because Ghetto Metal's about heroes and being a guitar hero, and DMC my hero, and so the Flash Gordon theme, and if you look in the Ghetto Metal, the imagery is the lightning bolt. We took that from Flash Gordon. Originally, the cover for Ghetto Metal was yellow and red, just like Flash Gordon. It was a total take. It was a total takeoff on the cover. And then I just inverted it and made the colors Run DMC colors, black, white, and red. But if you look at the beginning of the Ghetto Metal video, there's a lightning bolt flash, and it shows our logo. That's the Flash logo. That's the Flash Gordon shit, just inverted. But like I was saying, that Brian May harmony, like Flash, he's king of the blah, pow, pow. It's just that build up. That a trill and then a stab with that harmony, and I get those sounds through Amplitude, IK Multimedia's Amplitude, because they have the Brian May, amazing Brian May Amplitude, and you can achieve all those Brian May harmony sounds. If I was to try to achieve that with actual pedals, you couldn't do it, because. They went to Brian May and got his exact signal chain, modeled all his stuff, and there's stuff in that chain that I'm like, wow, that's what gives it that extra little bite of treble and things of that nature to make that harmony stuff stand out. But yeah, but back to the Def Leppard thing. The drum beat is not Def Leppard. The drum beat, I was going for Kiss. I Love It Loud. I'm a Kiss fan. Period. So it started. If you listen to the drum groove in Ghetto Metal and Kiss I Love It Loud, it's probably the same tempo. Like if you was a DJ and was mixing it, it would seamlessly just go. But I wanted it to open up just like I Love It Loud, that boom, boom, bah, boom, ah, boom, boom, yeah. So Ghetto Metal just starts just with that big drum opening, and people don't open up songs with that anymore, like that anymore. When the last time, you have that big arena drum opening? That's why people really like Ghetto Metal, because it reminds them of that.
I was about to say that. So, I mean, obviously I came for the guitar because I knew it was going to be that, well, the whole DMC vibe, but I'm a guitar player, so I came for the guitar. And I remember thinking the whole time, and actually I listened to it a couple of times again today, the drum sounds are so big. I mean, it is like, and what's funny is in the video, you're like in this little room, but it's like arena big. The drums are huge.
We wanted, trust me, if we could have went to an empty arena, we couldn't shoot in an arena, but that was the goal. And the drums, Chuck D from Public Enemy, he always says something about your drums should shake the scoreboards, because look, Public Enemy and Run DMC used to play and still play huge arenas, and in the '80s, their tours were huge. Where Jam Master Jay was on a 25-foot riser,
right.
Like Peter Criss. That's another reason why I love Run DMC, because the spectacle was just like Kiss.
Right.
It was a huge, Public Enemy, their DJ was on a 30-foot riser. And it was just the bombasticness of it. But yeah, capturing, Chuck D always said the drum should shake the scoreboard if you're playing in an arena. So that's what I wanted to do with Ghetto Metal. But then I still didn't feel like they hit hard enough, because when you have that arena sound, it's a very wide reverb sound. So you can lose some punch when you go that wide. So so those drums are reinforced with a mixture of actually it's my drummer playing the big arena beat, and then he's triggering drum samples from, which is like a mixture of 4 or 5 snares from classic Run DMC records. So what I did was mix the arena drum beat, live mic'd arena drum beat, with 2 or 3 snares from Run DMC records. So we got the main drum take down, and then he went back and just replayed it. And every time he hit the snare, it's triggering the snare from Sucker MCs, and it's tricky at the same time as the live drum kit is hitting. So, and then, I'm giving away all the production techniques, but then, if you double that and then pan the track left and right, and then compress and EQ the whole track, your drums can knock walls down.
Wow. That is...
Yeah, so,
I was wondering about that, because that's the side of the thing. I make pickups for a living. That's my real job. And so I am way on the other end of the signal chain from you. Where it goes into the guitar, that's what I know. But the other end of it, how you get it back out to the ears, is a whole nother thing that I'm always so fascinated with. I think it's so cool.
That's hard to jump in and out of as a guitar player. To be honest, that's what took me the longest. And at certain times, I have to stop being a producer and catch up guitar-wise and guitar tone. Then I have to stop sometimes being a guitar player and catch up with production techniques, because it's hard to do both simultaneously. But I tell you one thing I did at the beginning of the pandemic. I'm like, you know what? That small signal chain I was telling you about, I was like, you know what? Let me just simplify even more. I don't even need a wah pedal. I just want to go straight into an amp because I'm not focusing on my technique or my riffs. I'm focusing on, how many repeats the delay can do, and that's not what I want to do. I need to make impactful riffs. So let me turn all this, let me get everything I need and nothing I don't. So I just went, at that time I was with a different amp company, but I had a little small combo amp. I'm like, look, if I can make the riff sound dope, just my guitar into a small combo, and that's what it's about. Because then when you add everything else, it's just going to be crazier. Instead of starting crazy, and then it's just so processed, it's just, I like to start raw. Ghetto Metal started with that one riff, and I did that riff, like I said, through that small little combo amp. Simple riff. It's not math. It's never math. And that's one thing I had to tell myself. When you have everything at your disposal, you want to break the atom. You want to split the atom because you have the tools to do it. But you may not need to split the atom today.
Right.
You may just need to turn water from blue to green, something very simple. You know what I mean? So I simplified my rig, got to the bones of my playing, which is digging in, real funk, digging in to where every note, like you can feel the pain and you can feel the struggle. That's another thing, man, I really want to touch on when it comes to music and genre of music. Like, I have a hard time with people calling themselves the king of the blues and things of that nature. Look, everyone can have the blues, right? It's not exclusive to any race or any genre, but to certain people, to black people, the blues are heavy. It's a heavy connotation. It's a heavy feeling. Like the feelings that certain guys feel when they hit a slide into an open G, and that feels like exciting and groovy to them. To a black guy, that's heartbreaking. Why? Because that might remind me of my grandfather, or that music reminded my grandfather of painful times. Like African Americans veered away from blues and things of that nature because it was a painful memory of a time when we was being oppressed. That's why when Motown came, it was an upbeat, optimistic, new sound. And that sound became the sound of young America. Motown music didn't become the sound of black America. It became the sound of young America, whites and blacks coming together. But it took African Americans to shy away from blues, because blues is painful. Like, even when I play to this day, I would never classify myself. All right, and my next record that I'm doing is with B.B. King's granddaughter, Val B. King.
Wow.
It's called Fire and Ice. I'm producing, playing on it. It's gonna be absolutely amazing. It's a pure heavy blues record. I'm still not. I had a conversation with Val. She's the granddaughter of B.B. King, and we don't consider ourselves blues artists. We consider ourselves R&B artists or soul artists, and that's the whole thing. When you're a young black male, you can. It's hard to just classify yourself as a blues artist, because blues are the roots. If you're a blues artist, then you're also an R&B artist. You're also a soul artist. So that's why artists like Gary Clark, tremendous influence to me. Amazing player, such an inspiration. They tried to label him the new king of the blues, and he was like, "Hold up." Blues is just one thing that I really, really like. And yes, it's the foundation of what I do, but I also like Wu-Tang Clan, Curtis Mayfield, Mary J. Blige. You can't pigeonhole young black people as blues players. That's why all these new current kings of the blues outside of Eric Gales. He's the king. That's why all the current, Eric Gales is the man.
Oh,
He
he's
is
a
the king
monster.
of the blues.
Yeah.
He is the king of the blues. He has the right to say it because if you talk to that brother about his life, he'll tell you about his blues.
We have chatted, yes.
Look, he's the man, and obviously his blues is not how his bank account's looking or how his stock portfolio is looking this week. It's something deeper. It's something deep rooted. So any music you do, it has to be authentic. And so music that me and Daryl do, it's fun and it's about unity, but it's authentic. It's the same Run DMC sound that you love, just for 2022 and beyond. Like if you was a fan back then, you're gonna love it now. And that's what I love about putting out new music, because if you're smart and you get a really good single, you put it out and you promote it forever.
Yep.
You don't put it out and then 6 months later you're on to something else. You can do something else 6 months later, but continue to promote your strongest song. So like Ghetto Metal, I'm gonna promote it, and hopefully it'll be around long after I'm gone. And that's what's important. I want a young kid who look like me, or any kid who feel like he's an outsider or doesn't have the tools he need. Maybe he'll stumble across the Ghetto Metal video and be like, look, those guys look cool, and he looks like somebody that he looks like me. I can do it too. That's what me and Daryl really want to do with this single. Make kids of all races and genres feel like they can do it, but especially to the little black kids from the ghetto like me, who, my father didn't own a guitar shop. My father worked at an army base, and my mother was a teacher. So, guitars were expensive, and it was that yearly purchase. It was that Christmas purchase, and I didn't take it lightly. My parents saved months for it and got it from Sam Ash and Carl Place in Long Island. But it's something that was heavy, and it's something that I really, really appreciate. It wasn't something that was given to me, and even sitting here now, got gold plaques behind me, got platinum plaques behind me. I have Run DMC action figures behind me.
I saw those.
It's mind-blowing, because I'm a kid watching these cats on TV. They're superheroes to me, right?
Yep.
Well, now they are superheroes. DMC has comic books. He has action figures. They're Fisher Price dolls. He has a cartoon, children's books on Noggin. So dare to dream, have the audacity to dream, but at the same time, like everything you do, be authentic with it, and always remember that you're inspiring somebody. Somebody might be looking at you like, yo, that guy's cool. Like, people are watching your podcast like, look, this dude looks like me. He's a preeminent pickup maker. He has a hit podcast. It's like, I can do it too. No, it's not. Yeah. It's not funny, dude. Trust me, there's dudes that look just like you saying that this dude can do it. I can do it too. It might be just giving a guy an idea to start his own podcast or whatever. Those
are my favorite emails to get, like because of the YouTube videos we make. It's like I'll get an email and they'll say, I've watched a bunch of your videos about how to set up a guitar, and I started my own little Craigslist side business, and now I have those are my favorite, because you inspired somebody. Like that's my favorite. You can buy pickups from me and I can make a living. Like that's the money that pays the bills. But I really like getting those emails. That's what makes it. Yeah.
That's what makes everything worth it, man. Everything worth it.
Exactly.
But again, it has to be cool, man. That's why things that you do has to be fun and cool for people.
Yes.
So if you perform a certain genre of music, make it fun, make people be like, look, I want to do that too. Like, that's why I was into rock music, because you wanted to be a part of that scene. That's why I love Van Halen, because they always seemed like a band that was super inclusive.
Yeah.
Like, come party with us. Anybody can come in. What? We don't give a fuck. Jump. If you can jump, you can party with us.
Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, there was big house parties and stuff. Van Halen always struck me as a band that you will walk by a house that was jumping with a house party, rock, and you see girls and typical 80s house party. Guy staggers out the front door, leans against the front door, lights a cigarette. He sees you as a kid. Hey, kid, what are you doing? You want to come inside? Party inside. He'll invite you in. That's always that's what Van Halen's music seemed like to, and Kiss as well. Like it was always come party with us. As long as you can rock and roll all night, party every day, or shout it out loud. You can be a part of this army. And then also I like Kiss because when you talk about people not looking like me, Kiss was a band I can get into because they were characters.
Yes.
I knew they were white underneath, but as far as I'm concerned, I could have been underneath the makeup. And I was. I dressed up as Gene many, many times in my youth. And I like bass players, so I like Gene. Like most guys are Ace, but I'm Gene,
That's awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, let's take a pause real quick, and it can just be a virtual pause. And head over to Patreon. I want to tell you a couple of cool things about where I live because I think you'll find them cool. And then I want to ask you some more about song building. Like as a producer, where do you start? If you have you've opened up Pro Tools and there's nothing there and you have an idea, where do you start? So let's jump over to Patreon real quick and we'll chat about a couple things.
Sure, let's do it.
Well, guys and gals and everyone, thank you for hanging out with me this week. This has been what a blast of a podcast. I have to thank Big KO for this. I also have to thank Blake at the Tone Mob podcast for hooking this up because I made a new friend as a result. We've been chatting about some other stuff after recording the podcast. We actually recorded that a couple of weeks ago. What a cool thing. We don't have any sponsors this week for the podcast. Please do me a favor and check out the links below. All of those links do help us keep going. Also, Patreon gives you all of the stuff on Dylan Talks Tone and the podcast channel. So just make sure you know that. And thanks for hanging out, and we will see you in the next one.